Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we have an NBA finalist set. No surprise, Logan, but the Oklahoma City Thunder are advancing to the finals for the first time since 2012, this time with a different young big three, and they got to that spot in completely dominant fashion. They go up 17 points in the first quarter, holding Minnesota to 9 points in the opening period. They end up winning by 30. Logan, what do you take away from a performance this dominant to get all the way to the finals from the Thunder?
I mean, they're my front runners. I think they're gonna win a championship this year, man. Like that's my big takeaway. This defense was ridiculous all series long, and especially in this game, man. You mentioned it in the first quarter. They outscored them 26-9. Minnesota had less field goals made than turnovers. They had 3 field goals. They were 3 of 20, and they had 4 turnovers. It was the fewest points the Timberwolves scored in the first quarter of any game this season. And then at the end of the first half, it was more the same. They had more turnovers than field goals made, 14-12, man. I mean, Oklahoma City came out tonight, and they did not play with their food. This is an all-time great defense, and I think we've known that for a while now, and they've played at that level throughout these playoffs. But I think the thing that gives you the most confidence about this team going into the NBA Finals and winning the championship is the performance of the big three, specifically in this series. Like, I had been disappointed at the level that Jalen Williams was at and Chet Holmgren, and just the consistency of them. Specifically, JDub had a really down series against Denver, and Chet has just been up and down. But this series, I was super impressed with them. JDub gave you 22 points a night on 49% from the field, 46% from deep. Chet adds 18 a night on 57% from the field and 37% from deep. And SGA is doing MVP SGA things all series long into this game. Dude, in the first quarter of this game, SGA has scored or assisted, or excuse me, in the first half, SGA scored or assisted on 32 points. Like, it's just the perfect championship recipe, Carson. Like, I don't know how it could be any better. This is an elite defense with an elite big three with an elite supporting cast, and they're hitting their stride at the right time. Like, I just think they're going to roll, man. This was such a dominant closeout performance from Oklahoma City, man, and I think they're going to carry this into the finals.
Utterly dominant, as convincing a performance as you could have imagined. And yet it's not a surprise at all. Like, this is just what they do. They reach a defensive level that nobody else has in decades. They do it in a way that is so disruptive and so destructive for offenses with their ability to force turnovers that now OKC is feeding their offense at an elite level. And these leads just build and balloon, and they break teams' wills in a way that truly is unique in the history of this game. And when dominance becomes the expectation, you know you're looking at an all-time great. And that's where we're at with OKC right now. They do this, and you're not like, oh my God, what happened? You're like, oh yeah, cool. They did this again. This is what they do. I'll take it a step further than you, Logan. I don't think that this team is just clearly a heavy favorite in the NBA Finals. This is the best team since the KD Steph Warriors. I'm ready to say that. You look at the entire resume they have put together this year, 68-win regular season, tied for the 5th most wins in NBA history, but they did it with their second best player, in my opinion, missing more than 50 games. We've never seen that done. They had a top 2 net rating in NBA history this regular season. And then they come into the playoffs, and now they have the best postseason net rating by a team to go to the finals since the 2017 Warriors. They have won 4 different games in these playoffs by 30 or more points. We have never seen that done in a single postseason in NBA history. They have, I believe, the best relative defensive rating in the playoffs since the 1971 Bucks. They are winning the turnover margin by the biggest amount we have ever seen. They're creating the most points off turnovers we've ever seen. And then they have a completely unstoppable basketball player, one of the greatest scorers and greatest offensive engines in the half court we've ever seen. They have 2 guys alongside him who are playing like flat out two-way stars, and they have the best depth in the league. And in this series, they shot 38% from 3. So they got back to being elite at the one thing they hadn't been elite at in the first 2 rounds that they were elite at in the regular season, and that's their 3-point shooting, and they were excellent there again. So I don't know what else you would need to see. Like, since this team clutched up in game 4 against Denver, and they showed a really veteran level of poise and ability to win those big time down to the wire games, which we saw again in game 5 against Denver, which we saw in game 4 against Minnesota when they had to reach such a high level to win that game against a team that made 18 threes and was shooting the lights out from beyond the arc. They are at a level now where nobody can touch them. They're one of the greatest defenses we've ever seen, and they have gotten to an incredibly high level offensively as well. They are going to be overwhelming favorites in the finals, and deservedly so. The craziest part about it all, though, maybe, Logan, is that they can still get so much better. And I've said this before. In fact, I said this in a video I made glazing the Thunder today. I don't think it's impossible that in a couple years, this could become the best team that we have ever seen. And we talk about this being the age of parity, and it has been. The Thunder are coming to fuck that up, man. The Thunder are coming to destroy that, and they are coming to make this their era. Chet Holmgren is going to get so much better, Logan. He's 23. He's played 140 NBA games. He is scratching the surface of what he can be offensively. He is one of the most unique big man talents we've seen in this league in a long time. JDub will get better from here. He'll get more consistent offensively. He's only 24. Shai can still get better, and I think he will get better, man. You think about the leap that he took this year, improving his volume three-point shooting, the progression we've seen from him as a playmaker within these playoffs, within these series. Like, the guy is 26, and I still do think he can somehow reach another level. Obviously, all these improvements are on the margins at this point because he's an all-time great guard, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility of him still getting even better. And then they have the most draft capital in basketball to make moves, to improve their assets, to continue to draft high-quality players. And they have great role players under contract. Like, they've had a completely dominant season. They've reached a level we haven't seen from a basketball team in quite some time. And this is just the start. Like, the ceiling is actually non-existent, and the places this team is headed from here are going to be unbelievable. They're already unbelievable, but they are set up to be one of the greatest dynasties we've seen in the history of this league. I believe that.
I mean, that's not a ridiculous take. It's a masterclass in team building. I mean, you crush all of your draft picks that are all high-impact players. You continue crushing in the draft with your depth, not just at the top. You make the swing. Like, Presti's pivot from Paul George to get SGA, I mean, that's just one of the greatest trades of all time. Like,
Yep.
it really is. And so you start with that, then you crush in the draft, you build him up with this young group. SGA continues to get better and better, and the flexibility is really what blows me away. And the fact that they were able to add Caruso and Hartenstein to a roster that was already loaded last season, it's just unreal. The only thing that I think could limit this team is, nobody really expected this new CBA that the NBA dropped. Like, that's the only thing that I could really anticipate blowing this team up is money and JDub demanding a lot of bread, Chet demanding just because, I mean, they're all top 25 players. All of these guys could be, top 20 players in the league legitimately. So it's like, that's the only thing.
Big three. Everything around the big three will be fluid, but they'll keep the big three. And that's all that they need, in my opinion, to be the dominant team of the NBA for the foreseeable future.
I think some people might react and they'll go, oh my God, let them win one championship first. I don't think it's a ridiculous take, Carson. I don't even think you're early, man. I think you're on time. I think this is a timely take. Like, I think that it's very real. It's very possible. And the foundation is just so solid. I mean, that's really the difference, is that you're right. They're going to pivot around. They're going to continue in the draft, but it's like they've got all this capital to rebuild and continue getting young impact rookies on value contracts, and your core's solid. Like, I don't think it's a shoo-in because every year is so important. Injuries can dictate a lot, so it's not like this team could, is just magically going to run off 5 in a row or something like that. I think there may be a down year or something, but I definitely think over the next... What's your over-under? Next decade, Carson. How many titles do you think are Oklahoma City's?
Over-under, I'm setting at 3.
So like 3.5 or 2.5?
If you're going to make me pick a half, I'll say 3.5, I guess. I know that sounds crazy.
I like that. I think that's the right line. But they're just set up, like you said, man, better than anybody else. Like, the Timberwolves aren't going anywhere with Ant. This team's still going to be really competitive. The Nuggets aren't going anywhere with Jokic. Wemby and the Spurs are ascending. Like, the Rockets are going to continue to get better. The competition is stiff. And so it's like, it's going to take OKC bringing their A game, but the big key in all this is the youth. The fact that JDub and Chet have so much room to grow and get better and get more consistent, and they're already stars. They're already at that level, and their impact isn't one-dimensional. That's really, really crucial when we're talking about this team and their stars. Both of these guys are all defense caliber players along with elite offensive producers. So I like it, man. And truth be told, are we counting this year in the decade?
Yes.
Give me
if
the
you're
over.
going to make me set an over under
I'd take
3.5, I got to get this year.
I'd take the over.
It's incredible the position that they're in, and people have been so resistant to this team, but I think that the inevitability of their greatness has been very obvious. The fact that they have gotten to this point where they are this dominant, this fast, is truly an exception in NBA history. I've said it a million times, but they would be the youngest NBA champion since the 1977 Trailblazers. The only comparison in recent memory, in my opinion, is the 2015 Warriors, who had a big three, and all of their guys were in that 24 to 26 age range. They hadn't had a deep playoff run before, like OKC. They'd won a playoff series together, and then they reached that next level, and they're just an absolute bulldozer. I do want to talk specifically about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and how spectacular he was in this series, and specifically why there is such a big gap between him and Anthony Edwards right now, because I didn't really know that that was going to be such a talking point in this series. Like, I'm not trying to be facetious. I just thought it was very clear that Shai was on a different level than Ant as a basketball player right now. I didn't think that was going to be news in this series, but seemingly it has been. Everybody's talking about that. And I do think that it's pretty clear when you look at how both of these guys are able to dissect these super aggressive coverages they're seeing, these packed paints, lots of double teams, especially Ant in these last couple games. And this was a talking point after the last game Ant played, when I said I didn't think that he was bad. I didn't think that he was good necessarily, but I thought that he mostly did the right things on offense. The turnovers were high, the shooting efficiency was low, but it wasn't a game in which I wanted to see him force it as a scorer. But there were a lot of people criticizing him and saying, oh, he's got to empty the clip. He's got to just force it as a scorer. He has to be more aggressive. The reason that Ant was right not to do that, and the reason that Ant can't, quote unquote, force it as a scorer and have that be a good approach for your team offense, is because of his lack of an elite intermediate post up and isolation game. That is essential to beating a defense that is loaded up on you, that is packing the paint. Ant doesn't have that. He's a low efficiency mid-range shooter. He doesn't have a masterful handle. He really doesn't have much of a post bag to speak of whatsoever. So when he is facing a defense that is all about taking away his driving opportunities, he's either going to have to force really tough drives if he wants to be a scorer. And he was able to, on several occasions, still get all the way to the rim because he's just that special of an athlete. But that's difficult to do consistently. Or he is jacking contested pull-up threes, step-back threes. We got a lot of that in this one. So I was concerned that after the discourse, after last game, Ant would actually feel more of a pressure to go out there and try to get his as a scorer. And I knew that that wouldn't be the right approach. So I thought that he was significantly worse in this game than he was last game, because he wasn't as willing to be a playmaker, and because he tried to be a scorer against a coverage that he is not capable of being a high-level scorer against at this point in his career, at least. Shai is the exception to that, like truly the exception in the NBA today, because he can score with elite volume and efficiency against any defense, any coverage, any level of aggression, because he is a masterful intermediate isolation post-up scorer. He's the best in the league at that stuff as a guard. This dude is shooting 51%, Logan, on two-pointers outside of 8 feet, and he's making 5 of those shots per game. The volume easily surpasses anybody else in these playoffs. The efficiency is second out of 40 players to attempt 3 such shots per game. So he's giving you unrivaled production there. And this is why I've always been so high on Shai as a playoff scorer, man. Why even last year, going into the playoffs, when he had never been there as the player that we have known him to be over these last couple of years, I said, I think he is going to be one of the most resilient, one of the best playoff scorers we've seen in this league, because no defense can take those shots away. No defense can keep you from isolating a dude and getting to an elbow step back, isolating a dude and getting to a baseline step back, posting up a guy and getting to a fadeaway. It's just not possible. And normally those are the shots that a defense wants you taking because they're hard shots. The difference is Shai is the exception in that he can still be efficient on those shots. And then he's also the best in basketball at navigating packed paints. He has such a unique combination of the incredible handle, his incredible body control and balance and footwork, and then his ridiculous finishing and touch in the lane at 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. So even when you do load up, he's the hardest guy to keep away from the rim. He's just special in his ability to still find those angles. I think that he is the best guard at finding driving and finishing angles and finishing that we have seen since Michael Jordan. And so all of that stuff was on display in this one. And I also do think he's on another level from Ant as a playmaker right now. I thought that this was overall an encouraging playmaking run from Ant, but there is an inconsistency there. Whereas with Shai, as the Denver series went along and as this series went along, he just reached a mode where he is directing traffic. He is conducting the offense. He is organizing the spacing, and he is hitting the pressure points of the defense over and over again and getting the ball exactly where it needs to go. And then he still has a special ability to score against doubles and stunts and dudes shadowing him that no other guard has because of that incredible isolation, post-up, intermediate shot making. So it's just really not close between these two right now. And that's not a knock on Ant whatsoever. Ant is 23 years old. He has gotten better every year of his career. He has added a layer in some way or another. He is a mega talent. I want to be very clear about that. He's a top 10 player on the planet. SGA is just one of the greatest guards ever. And there is a nuance and there is a level of control and half-court mastery in his game that Ant doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that you needed to elaborate. I'm surprised that just the discourse got like that. Like, I think that's kind of obvious at this point. I mean,
I agree.
Ant's 3 years younger than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You mentioned it. Every year, it reminds me of Steph when Steph would talk about when he was coming up at Davidson, and Dell would talk about Steph coming up as an athlete. Every single offseason, Steph would deliberately practice one thing to add to his bag. If it was first the shooting, then it was the ball handling, and then it was the finishing. And obviously, Steph was never as highly touted as an Anthony Edwards, but it's like that's how you get better. You add one thing after another, and then, 5 years down the line or so, you've got everything. And I think Ant's going to get there. I do think there's a lot of areas where Ant can improve. And also, there's one thing I want to mention before I talk about where Ant can improve. Ant's offensive situation is way worse. Now, the Oklahoma City defense deserves a ton of credit for how they play them and stuff like that. And I just think that this situation is still harder for him because they can gamble off of guys. I think lineups with Gobert are really, really hard. Carson, the only reason I mention this is because I do think there is a difference in the fluidity and the ease and the spacing of the offenses between these two. I'm not trying to make an argument that that's the only reason whatsoever. I'm just saying that I do think it's important to mention that the reason that it's almost like a stacking effect. Oklahoma City's defense is already great, but the fact that they don't have to respect Minnesota's spacing makes it easier for them to gamble and play off of those guys and divert attention to Ant.
I just don't know if I totally agree with that. I think that Minnesota is a very similar level of a three-point shooting team that OKC is. I mean, OKC was super inconsistent
they can space out.
The arc.
Hartenstein has the little mid-range. Chet can actually legitimately space the floor. I just think that I still think that's a bigger difference between these two teams. I don't think they're I think Oklahoma City's clearly a better three-point shooting team. Like, Minnesota's got shooters, but I just trust Oklahoma City's shooting more.
They've both had their inconsistencies, but when you get a lineup out there where you've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and you've got Dante DiVincenzo.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they don't have lineups that they can turn to. I'm just saying you're always going to play Gobert 25-plus minutes a night. I mean, I know that he sucked in this series. I'm not going to dress it up. Rudy was a fucking ass, but
offensively,
Rudy sucks, man. I'm kind of over Rudy. I'm not going to lie, bro. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm kind of over him, bro. But I do think there are some areas where Ant can get better, and I think you saw it in this series. I mean, the big thing is Oklahoma City's defense isn't going anywhere. So what is Ant's new goal? What's his new task? Figuring out how to beat them. Like, this is the team. Whoever in the West is going to have to go through Oklahoma City. First, I think Ant needs to make more of a commitment to moving constantly off ball, and I wonder if Minnesota's offense just needs to. I think Ant just consciously has to, because there are just moments in this series where he's standing alone in the corner. He's not making an effort to go and get the ball. I think he has to have. I think this is going to come with time too. Just that feel, that veteran feel where he goes early in the game, they're doing their best to X me out. I got to get creative and find ways to get open and find myself opportunities. And I think that starts with off ball, because the reality of this Minnesota situation is these spacing issues that I brought up probably aren't going anywhere. So instead of, that's not just going to be a cure-all. You've got to figure out how to win with those constraints in your offense. So I think that's a big step for Ant. 2 is the intermediate shot making that you were talking about with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And not only is it an intermediate game where it's in the mid-range and in the short mid-range with pull-up mid-ranges, with floaters, stuff like that, it's also a back-to-the-basket game that I think is going to open up angles and passing opportunities and open up the rest of the floor for Anthony to dominate in, because he doesn't really turn to that whatsoever. He is a very face-up player. And I think that will help his game out. And again, he's young. I think he's got time to build these things, but he's got the elite downhill rim pressure. He has got the elite pull-up jump shooting. I was really impressed with the growth that we saw from Anthony Edwards as a playmaker this year, and I think he's going to continue to get better. I think Ant's going to be the best guard on the planet one day. I think he's going to figure these things out. He is still so young, and he's so accomplished. He's been to the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back seasons, and he's 23 years old. This franchise has only been to the Western Conference Finals one time pre-Anthony Edwards. Kevin Garnett in 2004. It's like he has already hit major milestones. We have already seen him grow so much as a basketball player. I think we are seeing the journey of a warrior, of a beast. I think these are the stepping stones. You got to get knocked down, and I think Ant is going to get back up, and I think he's going to get back up and be better. He is a guy that takes shit personal, that has the chip on his shoulder, that I think he's going to take this to heart, and I think Ant's going to come back harder and better next season, and he's going to be even better. But there are areas that I think he can improve in, and I clearly think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a better player. Yeah. That's funny to me, man.
It is. I think that it stems from probably a two-sided thing of Shai.
I think people are excited too.
Enough.
I think people are excited about Ant and want to do that, and he's such a fun young superstar. Absolutely. So I do think some of it definitely does come from a place of enthusiasm and optimism.
I totally agree. Ant drums up hype like nobody else, and brother, I see it with you all the time. I don't know if anybody gets more hyped up by Anthony Edwards, and I thought that he had a couple of really impressive games in this series. I want to be clear. I'm not knocking Ant. He is seeing extremely difficult coverages, aggressive coverages against an all-time great defense, but I did think that Shai was also seeing very aggressive coverages from a really good defense, and I think I just would push back on the level of gap between the offensive supporting casts that you're saying there is. Minnesota still shot the ball well from deep in this series. They were inconsistent, but they shot 37% from three. This was a top 5 team in threes made in 3-point percentage in the regular season. They shot 37%
but
from
you
deep
think there's
a
large
while Ant was shooting poorly. I would say the biggest gap in this series,
creation gap, right?
That's where I would say the biggest gap was in this series, the level of JDub compared to the level of Julius Randle. But when it comes to just the level of respect commanded by the shooters away from the ball, once we got into the second half of this series, because early on Minnesota was more willing to play Shai one-on-one, which I thought was a huge mistake. Last couple games, man, they are boxes and elbows. They are loading up paints. And Shai is just able to dissect that in a way that Ant is not, for the reasons I already articulated. They are daring him to beat them as an intermediate shot maker and as a playmaker. And he was able to do those two things at a level that Ant was not. He was also able to be effective as a driver at a level that Ant is not. And that's not a knock on Ant. It's just Shai playing at one of the highest levels we have ever seen from a guard. To me, in these playoffs, he has cemented his status at a top 3 guard peak this century that I said he was at in this regular season. Over the last 2 rounds, Shai is averaging 30.5 points, 6 boards, 7.5 assists on 60% true shooting.
You're saying Kobe and who?
Steph, of course.
Oh, guard. Okay.
Guard. And you know what company he is in, Logan? Averaging those numbers, 36 and 7 on 60% true shooting in a
Michael
12-game
Jordan,
span.
man.
Do you want to guess? There's
How
4
many?
other dudes on the list.
And this is playoffs, correct?
This is a 12-game playoff span, 36-7 on 60% true shooting.
I would definitely say MJ. I would say Kobe, but I don't know if Kobe was ever that efficient in a run.
Actually, Kobe barely misses it because of rebounds. He's the first guy off the list effectively.
Did Big O ever do it?
No, I mean, just 60% true shooting in those days was impossible by relative true shooting.
I don't know. Maybe, and this is just guards or this is
Guess
anybody?
goats. This is anybody. Guess goats.
Chuck.
What the hell? All right, you're cut off. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, James Harden, and now Gilgeous-Alexander.
James Harden.
Here we go. A Logan crash out.
What? When did he do that? I must have been asleep. I must have been
2019.
hibernating.
He was hooping in that run, man. You were hibernating. That was pretty great basketball from James Harden. But I do think that Shai has surpassed Harden in the area where Harden had the claim to be the best of this century, and that's as an isolation scorer. I don't think that Harden's isolation game ever translated to the postseason at this level because of the lack of elite intermediate shot making. Like, it truly is so valuable, so essential, and so reliable. Harden in these postseasons might shoot 30% from deep. Shai is going to shoot 50 to 55% from this intermediate range every single year, and nobody can keep him from getting to those spots. I've called him the most complete on-ball scoring guard ever, and I stand by that. And now him getting the pull-up 3 going like he has as of late, where he's got multiple makes from deep in 3 straight games, that's huge. Him being able to keep defenses honest with the pull-up and the step-back 3. He's just playing at a truly all-time great level, and watching him grow throughout these series has been remarkable. Like, he is doing that all-time great thing where he figures a defense out and he figures a matchup out as the series goes along. He got so much more comfortable attacking Denver's zone as that series went along. He got so much more productive and efficient as a scorer and impactful as a playmaker. In this series, like, he has really only one down game, and that's game 3 when Minnesota makes several adjustments. They're not pressuring up as high. Rudy is coming up a little bit higher out of drop coverage, so they're taking away some of those mid-range looks that Shai was able to get to easily, and essentially they're just putting way more pressure on him. They're loading up on him a lot more, and he goes out in game 4 and plays, I would say, the smartest game I've ever seen from him. Just a masterpiece. And then he was every bit as great in this one. I do think that his basketball IQ is underrated. I also think that some people underrate just how massive his scoring gravity is. Like, he is one of the most impactful scorers we have ever seen. Because no, he's not a conventionally elite playmaker, right? He's not always whipping these jaw-dropping skip passes. But he doesn't have to be, because defenses will flat out double him. They will flat out shadow him with a level of aggression that no other perimeter scorer in the game today draws on a consistent basis. And so he just has to get the pieces around him arranged. And it's not always complex passes, but he's making the reads he needs to. And that's leading to such easy offense for his teammates. Just one of the greatest offensive players we've ever seen. And if you don't think that he has a strong case for being a top 2 player alive right now, I think you're out of your mind. If you have Giannis over him, that's totally fine by me. I had Giannis at number 3 when we ranked our top 30 players back in March. I had Shai at number 2, and I'm sticking with that. There was a time early in the playoffs where I thought Shai's decision-making was a little too shaky, and maybe he did belong down in that 3 spot, but he has been at an impeccable level for the better part of 2 rounds now. Just truly flawless basketball, and you can't overstate how massive that is for OKC and just how much respect and credit the guy deserves.
Yeah, he does, man. I think he's going to get it this year, Carson. I think they're going to win the championship. I think he's going to get... honestly, man, the thing with SGA, I think the exact same thing happened with Jokic. When Jokic won, boom, immediately we saw a 180 collectively from everyone. Something about that ring, man. And I think once SGA gets it, I think all this washes away, and people are going to appreciate him for the legend that he is.
I hope that you're right. I don't know if you're right. We'll see. That definitely did happen with Jokic, where
I think basketball
Nate
discourse
Graham
is just kind of
peaking.
inherently toxic. Like, the Indiana Pacers could put up a good fight, and people will probably shit on Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana for not winning. Like, it's sad the way it goes, but I think SGA is going to... That's what legends do, man. They make it undeniable. They make you're not going to be able to tell me no. And SGA is one of those guys. That he's going to get to the top. He did it. Nothing you can tell him. He's going to be a champ. So I think it's inevitable, man.
All-time great driving and finishing, truly. All-time great mid-range shot making. And speaking of that masterful shot making, Logan, 40 points last game. He only had 8 free throw attempts until the intentional.
How many did he have tonight, Carson? How many did he have tonight?
34, 7 and 8 on 64% true shooting tonight, Logan, with 4 free throw attempts. And, I almost don't even want to play into the game because, yeah, the guy gets fouled a lot because he's the hardest player in basketball to guard without fouling. But what I've always said is you're not a free throw merchant when you're one of the greatest at putting the ball in the basket we have ever seen at your position. When you shoot 53% from the field last year, 52% from the field this year, that's what Shai is capable of. And he's just playing at a remarkable level. But Chet and JDub, dude, they're just flat out stars. Like, they have risen to the occasion in such a big way when both of them had their shaky moments in that Denver series. Chet coming into his own like this, it just fires me up, dude. Like, first of all, this guy is hammering everything around the rim. He's got 34 dunks in the playoffs. That leads the field. And you have consistently seen a level of aggression from him in the dunker spot, off the roll, off offensive rebounds, as a driver even, that is different than what we saw from Chet last year. But also now these last couple games, he's just raining threes.
Can I ask you something? Do you think long-term, and this is crazy.
Yeah.
I might be a little off my rocker. Do you think Chet could be better than SGA?
I think it's highly unlikely.
I mean, I think so too, but I'm just talking two-way impact. I don't think it's impossible.
It's not impossible. I'm that high on Chet, but it would require him reaching like a top 20 all-time peak. I think that's where Shai is right now. I don't know if I'm quite that high on his offensive game. I do think Chet is going to be a top 10 player. I do think Chet could be a top 5 player, and I think this is going to be one of the great duos we've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Chet thing, for God's sakes. It's Shai being one of the greatest offensive players ever.
Chet's already one of the best rim protectors in the league, and I think Chet's got a lot more room to grow into offensively as like a creator himself, man.
Brother, you're preaching to the choir. I agree with all of this. I literally have been the biggest Chet fan on the planet. I said he was the best prospect since Anthony Davis. It's just Shai. Like, that's the only reason that I say it's highly unlikely. I think that Chet is going to be the best number 2 in basketball, and I don't think it'll be all that close. And I do think he's going to be north of a 20-point-per-game scorer and just has such a unique offensive skill set. But Shai being the offensive engine that he is, there's just few guys in history who surpass that level of value. But when Chet is shooting like this, when he is finishing with this aggression, this is a dude who's playing like a top 20 sort of player in basketball because, as you mentioned, the rim protection is just ridiculous. I mean, he's got 6 blocks in these last 2 games. He's the technically best rim protector in basketball. He, in wins in this series, averaged 20 points per game on 66% true shooting. Just a totally different level of offensive production than you were getting from him before, and a different level of confidence and comfort. The way he's stepping into these threes quickly, that's massive for OKC. And JDub has just gotten everything going, like the mid-range game, the three-point shooting. He, in wins in this series, averaged 25, 7, and 5 on 60% true shooting. So I said this after game 4, but when those 3 guys play this well, nobody has a chance against OKC. And those 3 guys are playing that well with a consistency that we had not seen in the first 2 rounds. Like, all of them simultaneously having it going like this. Special stuff, man. And we've touched on some of these like best young big 3 ever conversations. I would go out and say, I do think that this is the best young big 3 on like their first deep title kind of run that we've seen. I think if you compare Shai right now to Steph in 2015, because that's the one that comes to mind for me, those Warriors, I think Shai right now is better than Steph was in the 2014-15 season, to be clear. I think Chet right now is better than Dre was in 2015. I just think he's a totally different level of offensive player, and Dre was special defensively, of course. But both Steph and Dre like took leaps in 2016 from already being the incredible players they were, and Dre was like a fringe top 10 player, and Steph reached a top 5 offensive peak in NBA history, and like that is probably conservative. So I'm just saying, as a comparison point to like your crowning sort of run, I don't think we've ever seen a big 3 this young, this great.
I'm racking my brain, man.
I mean, really, I think the only comparison is the 2015 Warriors. To have everybody that young, that's the one.
I mean, it's just so hard to get young talent like this all together. Like, mostly when you get one of those type of players, like say a young LeBron, it's like you're going to be too damn good to get any other young talent. Like,
you were saying it with Presti, dude. It required an all-time great trade with Shai, one of the greatest draft classes ever in 2022 when they get both Chet and JDub. It is a historic
they got them
rarity.
In the same class.
Same class.
That's crazy, bro.
Only comparison. That's like
like a Steelers 1970s draft class, man.
Well, I do have a couple of historical comparisons in mind. 1956, Logan. Can I take you back then when the Celtics got both Bill Russell and Tommy Heinsohn?
I was watching Mr. Ed.
That one has this beat.
I was watching Mr. Ed, bro.
Russell. You were watching Mr. Ed back then. The Celtics were building a dynasty. 1987, the Bulls get Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. That's pretty great. And then I think this is the next one that you look at in terms of a single draft class, bringing you multiple players with that level of impact who, like, potentially are going to kickstart a dynasty or at least be pivotal pieces in a championship. So it's extremely rare. And then the Caruso-Hartenstein signings were perfect. You go further than that, dude. Aaron Wiggins was the 55th pick. They got Isaiah Joe as a former second rounder. Like, Lou Dort was an undrafted free agent. I just think Sam Presti is the best GM of my lifetime.
Caruso
and the fact that he hasn't had a title, it's crazy. But
Caruso started with the OKC G League team too, I'm pretty sure, man. I think that was his initial spot.
Just incredible. Well, Dagnall too. Dagnall was a G League guy.
He was the G League coach, and then they brought him up. It's crazy, man. They said it on the broadcast too, though, man. It starts top down. They were talking about Steve Kerr initially with the Dubs, but it really does. And this organization has put full faith in Sam Presti. Sam Presti has put full faith in Mark Daigneault, and Mark Daigneault has put full faith in his players. And it all works. I think the best organization in basketball right now.
Absolutely. And Logan, I'm just going to say real quick before we move on and talk about Minnesota side of this, we cannot forget what people said about this team, because you were talking about this with Shai. Maybe people are going to go and they're going to try to erase it off the whiteboard and say, oh, I never said that. I would never say that. People were saying, yeah, this team was going to get bounced by the Lakers. Kenny Beecham, the GOAT, came on, told us he was talking to an NBA player who said their bold take was that the Thunder are going to lose in the second round. They don't know who to. We're still seeing Markieff and Marcus Morris doing their tour of saying, yeah, the Thunder aren't really all that. Like, people called them fake. People called them too inexperienced. People called them soft. They said JDub was a fraud. The JDub had to be traded. They said that Chet wasn't ready. And like, you just got to remember that, man, as this team is putting ass whooping upon ass whooping on the competition, who was on the right side of history, who was on the wrong side of history. It's just unbelievable levels of disrespect that this team went through for how obviously great they are. I mean, up to this series, a ton of people picking Minnesota to beat them, and Minnesota's really good, but they're not the Thunder. They're just a level above everybody else in basketball. For Minnesota, Logan, we talked about Ant a little bit, where he can be better. Julius Randle, how do you grade and react to his performance in this series?
I think the numbers are kind of deceiving. Like,
oh, it's one of the fakest stat lines ever tonight.
I mean, like,
it's like Xavier Worthy in the Super Bowl this year, man.
Yeah,
you look
bro.
back on this game and you think Julius Randle played well, you would get the wrong idea of what happened out there.
I have so many questions about all of this offseason for Minnesota and what they do moving forward and how they operate and how they get over this. Again, what I said earlier against these great teams, and we talk about this with the NFL too. There is a top dog in your conference. And so the bar is that team. For the NFL, it's you got to beat Josh Allen. You got to beat Patrick Mahomes. You got to beat Lamar Jackson. It's like you're going to have to go through the top dog. For the NBA, it's the same way. You're going to have to go through Oklahoma City. They are the new standard. How do we beat them? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really know how Julius Randle or Rudy Gobert can be effective against this team in a meaningful way. It's like Gobert's always going to have his job defensively. I just don't know if Randle can be the second guy, Carson, and I don't know where they find that guy for this matchup. Randle has improved so much, and I was so impressed with Randle in the first two rounds, and I don't want to just wipe that away, and then we go completely negative in this series. That being said, this was a really bad series, and I think this is going to be a problematic matchup every single time Minnesota runs into them in the playoffs because he's not able to attack mismatches at a high level against this team, because this team is so good at rotating and timely blitzing him and, forcing him into mistakes. It was huge in this one, man. Randle just getting sped up and throwing balls away and having bad turnovers. He has almost 4 turnovers per game in this series, and that's massive. I'm just worried about Minnesota in their future in general, man. I mean, you look at key players they might lose. Naz Reid has a $15 million player option. I'm probably denying that if I'm Naz Reid. I think I can go out there this offseason and get way more of a bag, probably $5 to $10 million more per year at least. I think Naz is a baller. I already said Naz. Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is an unrestricted free agent this season. He was on a $4 million price tag, one of the best value deals in basketball. You might lose him. Randle is on a $31 million player option. I don't know if he's going to accept that or not. It's like there's a lot up in the air. And then you look at Gobert, and I see a depreciating asset that is probably impossible to move off of. So I think you just got to ride it out with him making $71.5 million over the next 2 years and then $38 million on a player option in 2028. So it's just, this is the hard part. And Tim Connolly, Carson, God bless him, has shown us that he's able to make moves and pivot. I just don't really know exactly what that looks like. They've got a lot of moving parts this offseason. I didn't even mention the fact that, what do you do with Mike Conley? Is Mike Conley in your rotation next season? Is Dillingham going to be ready to step up in that role and contribute? I tend to think that he's probably the better answer. There's some very encouraging things about Minnesota. Anthony Edwards and his ascendance, I think he's going to continue to get better. I think you have to be really, really impressed with what you got out of Terrence Shannon Jr. in this series and how he can contribute to your franchise moving forward. Jaden McDaniels got a lot better this season. So, it's not all bad, but there are a lot of variables that I'm just concerned about with this team, Carson. I don't think there's a quick fix or a simple or an easy fix because, again, the bar is not getting back to the Western Conference Finals. I definitely think Minnesota can do that. It's about getting over the hump and beating Oklahoma City, and there's not a simple move that does that for Minnesota.
No, there's not. And when it comes to Julius Randle, he just got eaten alive in this series. Just flat out. He, between games 2 and 4 combined, had 11 points. He was 3 of 18 from the field. He had 9 turnovers, just a complete disaster. And then in the first half of this game, when this was an actual basketball game, he has 8 points and he has 4 turnovers and he's completely uncomfortable. And like you said, he can't put the ball on the floor. They're fronting him. They're swarming him. They're just taking the ball from him. Alex Caruso absolutely took his soul in the first half, and just what an incredible game this was from Caruso, who's been such a pivotal part of this playoff run. Randle was just an absolute disaster in 3 of 5 games. And overall, this was a good postseason from him because the first 2 rounds were that good. But he just can't produce in this matchup. Until Oklahoma City loses some of these key defensive pieces, I don't see the solve for Randle. He can't attack from the perimeter because he can't handle against these dudes. He can't post up because he can't get position without them fronting and either intercepting the pass or somebody coming over with a double from the backside, and then they overwhelm him. Just fundamentally, his play style is not going to be successful against this OKC defense. So you look at what's next for Minnesota, and you really aren't close to OKC. 3 of 5 games in this series, you got dominated. You have to figure out point guard. That's one of the biggest bullet point items that they need to figure out.
I do think Dillingham is the long-term answer.
I know he's the long-term answer, but he wasn't ready to be in your rotation this year.
I think
he's in his second year he's going to be.
Carson.
Yeah?
I think he is. I think Dilly is going to be ready.
I think so, man.
Every time, and I know Dillingham didn't get a ton of burn this year, but every time Dilly played to me this year, he brought energy. He brought an infusion of offense. I think he is a good decision maker. Offensively, I'm not worried about Dillingham at all, man. I think he's going to be all right. I'm just worried about him defensively and what this does to this team defense because with all of his flaws, Conley is at least still a good team defender, and
Yeah.
he's positionally sound and knows where to be. I feel like Dillingham is definitely going to get attacked more. Like, that's my only concern. I really think offensively, I think Dillingham's going to be fine, man. Like, maybe he deals with some inefficiencies, maybe he deals with some stuff like that, but by and large, I think Dilly's ready.
I just can't be that optimistic, man. Like, I think that he's a very talented offensive player for sure. I think that defensively, he is in for a life of getting hunted, and we know how problematic that is. That was always the concern with him as a prospect, just being so tiny and so slight. And then, like, I don't know if I've seen the necessary level of refinement as a playmaker. He's very reliant on the pull-up jump shooting, of
No, man,
course.
I
It's
really
just a
like
lot to ask of a year 2 player to
it.
say, "Hey, can you be the starting point guard for a contender? Like,
All
you're
I'm
gonna be the
saying
difference for us?"
is I liked all the time that I saw Dilly on the court. I really liked his process. I really liked his decision making. I
He's
thought that
talented.
I don't know. I thought he brought an infusion of offensive talent to this team when he was on the floor, and he brought a bunch of energy. Like, and I don't
It's
think
just asking a big leap.
It is, but also Ant is still going to be this team's number one offensively. It's not like you're asking him to lead out the offense. Yes, he's going to be the team's point guard, but Ant's still the number one here. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about Dillingham. I think he can be really impactful, and I think he can have a winning impact next year.
I just want them to have a reliable secondary playmaker and decent offensive threat alongside Ant. Like, yeah, he's going to be initiating the offense. You don't need a true point guard, obviously, but you need somebody who is more of a scoring threat than Mike Conley, who can also make plays. Maybe they do just go with Dante as the starter. I think that that would be an upgrade. Maybe if they are able to bring back Nah, they go with him as the starter, but still, like, that's not the level of offensive player that I would like them to have. I really would like another guard who can create and who can play make at a higher level than that. But when it comes to their offseason priorities, because like you said, there are some guys coming off the books, I think you have to find a way to pay Nah before Nas Reed. To me, he's the higher priority. What do you think? If you got to choose one or the other,
Nas.
you go with Nas Reed? I view Nickeil Walker as the more
dude,
impactful playoff guy with what he does
you
defensively.
don't think Minnesota's going to burn down if they let Nas Reed go, man?
Okay, I'm not talking about it from a morale perspective.
Bro, I think that matters, bro. I don't think you can let Nas Reed walk.
Can you let Shai's cousin go? How cool is it? They have Shai's cousin on their team. Do you know that Shai's cousin?
He's a beast. Don't get me wrong, but here's one reason. Reason number one is he's the lifeblood of Minnesota. You can't let Nas Reed go. Reason number two, basketball reason. I think he gives you the most valuable basketball look alternatively to what you're getting with Rudy Gobert, and that's why I would keep him, because Nas gives you the spacing that you need. Like, he's not a great defender. Like, Nas is not a perfect basketball player, but
defender.
I think you need that look, man. I think you need that look, and I wouldn't want Nas to go. I think you can. I don't want to disrespect JDub because he's a great basketball player. I feel like Nickeil is a little bit more replaceable than Nas.
I see what you're saying, just about having the small ball look offensively.
The archetype, more specifically, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
They already have some depth in terms of their wings. Obviously, you have Jaden McDaniels in that elite defensive starter mold, and then you do have Dante and Terrence Shannon Jr. I think you have to feel really good about Jalen.
I think he's getting burned. I think both of them are getting burned.
Maybe you're right about the specific construction of this roster. I just think Nickeil Walker is better than Nas Reed. I think he's a more impactful playoff player with his two-way impact. But Terrence Shannon's going to be a legit rotation guy next year. I think that you can say that. So maybe you're right. But either way, well, probably one of them is going to be gone. But I would be fine with mostly running this back if I'm Minnesota, because you talk about the measuring stick, and it's like, yeah, that's important to understand who you're trying to stack up to. At the same time, you can't just magically wave a wand and say, okay, now we can compete with OKC. Like, it's very possible that move just doesn't exist for them. And right now, they can beat everybody other than OKC. And sometimes it is just about staying within striking distance, giving yourself a puncher's chance. And God forbid OKC has an injury. Like, are you next in line? As currently constructed, I think there's a real chance Minnesota is next in line. We'll see what Denver does. I think those are the two teams. I mean, the West is really, really good, but I thought those were the second and third best teams in the West this year. I would give Denver actually the edge over Minnesota, but that specific matchup is a whole different can of worms. So the point is, they're in that upper echelon. I'm higher on Gobert than you are, I think. Gobert is still an amazing defensive anchor. I thought that he was excellent defensively. I don't disagree with the offensive problems that he poses. That's always been the case. It's always frustrating. There's always going to be minutes where he plays himself off the floor because he can't catch a pass or finish off the roll. But his ability to defend in isolation, his ability to protect the rim, I thought was all very impressive. They were much better statistically with him on the floor, and that's because their defense was so great. Your depth is really good. They just can't beat full strength OKC. And Julius Randle is maybe the biggest reason for that. Like, he's just not reliable enough, especially in this matchup. So we'll see what goes on with his contract. Does he opt in? I would guess no. I would guess he wants to get paid a higher dollar value now, and he wants the security of a long-term deal. I don't know if they could pull this off, but I'm going to propose this to you, Logan. This is the one path I think Minnesota has to actually jumping up a level that doesn't involve something like kind of miraculous, like Rob Dillingham just getting way better in year 2, right? Suddenly being like a star sort of player or whatever, which that's not going to happen yet, maybe down the line, but not this fast. A Randle for KD sign and trade. I am stealing this proposal. I saw this online. Randle, DiVincenzo, Dillingham, and a first for Kevin Durant. Would you do that?
Which side?
For Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Minnesota.
Right? I mean, it's giving up a lot, but it's Kevin Durant. I mean, he would just be so fantastic.
I really do like
so fantastic.
The one part that the only piece of that I'm apprehensive about is Dillingham, but I do think that gets them closer. Like, it certainly does. I'm not worried about KD the way I'm worried about Randle for sure. And I mean, and KD, I think would really complement each other. Like, yeah, I'd do that if I'm Minnesota, even though I do like Rob. And you know what? For Phoenix, I actually don't think that's bad of a deal. You get a young stud point guard that you can build around. You've got a decent secondary star.
You're getting a lot of Kentucky Wildcats to pair with Book.
And you
need Wildcat Central.
And you need incentive to be competitive, or you need to be as competitive as possible because you don't have any of your first-round picks. So if I'm being honest with you, Carson, I actually would probably want to get more for Kevin Durant than that if I'm Phoenix. Really? But if that was like the last, I don't think that's a bad deal, but I feel like I could get more capital for KD.
The KD bidding war is going to be really interesting because you're only getting him for 1 year and then you have to pay him. He's 36 years old. So that obviously knocks his value. At the same time, like, there's going to be a bidding war because everybody's going to be looking and thinking, oh, we can get discounted KD.
Exactly.
What contender in their right mind wouldn't want to add him at a discounted price? And I wonder if that ends up driving the price up. Actually, I think that this is a pretty legitimate trade offer, though. The challenging thing for Minnesota is, like, you're toggling two timelines effectively because, yes, you're this good right now and you want to make the push right now. Ant is also 23. And is there a timeline down the line with him and maybe Dillingham is a key part of that? And you want to keep that first round pick because you want to make sure that you're still able to put high end talent alongside him. I totally see that perspective. I just think Kevin Durant is a top 10 player and he's the guy who could give them a real chance to beat OKC. And the way I see it, like, they are in on this window. They're in on 30-year-old Julius Randle. They're in on Rudy Gobert in his mid-30s, and they're in on him for a couple more years still. Like, if you're going to be trying to contend, why not really, really maximize your chances? So I don't know what the possibilities is that we actually see that, but I think it would be a huge difference maker for Minnesota because I just don't believe enough in Julius Randle, unfortunately, as a number 2 to get by a team as great as OKC at the least. And I think that you saw exactly why in this series. Any other shout outs you want to give, Logan? Any other nuggets of wisdom you want to drop? Mike Conley shot 30% from the field in these playoffs. Can we give a big ups to Mike? Legend.
Like I just got hit with a flashbang. Oh my gosh.
It's so unbelievable, dude, how, like, man, all he has is that floater.
Father time, man. Father time. Also,
like a truck.
I don't know, man. I kind of got old and tired of watching them right-handed offhand floaters, man.
Yeah.
He's cooked.
He
Conley's
is.
cooked, man.
We do have some super chats I want to get to. Indie Merchant Sam says, Nas Reed FC, it was a good run. Fly high.
Can't let that boy go, man. You got to hold on to Nas Reed, dude.
I think he's probably just talking more about the Wolves being done. Maybe he is saying Nas Reed is going to go bye-bye.
I hope not, dude. I'm going to crash out. If Nas Reed leaves Minnesota, I will crash out.
I will say no shame in going down to the Thunder, man. No shame in that at all. Did the Wolves play up to their potential?
He's a 68-win basketball team who would have won 70 if Chet had been there. Like, I mean, dude, they could have broke some records, actually, if they were fully healthy.
Absolutely. Brennan Baker, thank you for your generous donation. Of all the crazy advantages OKC had in this series, I think coaching might have been the biggest gap. Obviously not most impactful because there's only so much you can do from the sidelines. What's your take on that, Logan?
I guess I agree with that if you're like lambasting Finch for not having his guys ready to go. I mean, like the level that the only real issue I had with Minnesota from that perspective is the fact that they just folded up at the first, like in this game, at the first point of adversity, they folded like origami. Like they just went down like a house of cards. So if that's what you're talking about, maybe so. I think the biggest advantage is just that offensive skill and creation gap from your secondary stars because Ant had nobody that he could turn to. And obviously, Ant wasn't as great as he could have been, but he just didn't get what he needed out of his supporting cast. And SGA did. So I see what you're saying. I do think that was the biggest advantage, though.
I don't think that Finch coached a good series. I think the defensive game plan in the first two games was silly. I don't know what he saw in that Denver series that made him think, or what he's seen from SGA ever that made him think like, yeah, we should probably see if he can beat us as a scorer. Like, no, they should have deployed more zone earlier in the series. They should have loaded up on Shai more earlier in the series. I also think, not to hate on Mike Conley, and I know that like the Timberwolves were good.
I completely agree with this, man. I completely agree.
Should have been Gilgeous-Alexander Walker or Dante DiVincenzo starting. So there were definitely some mistakes that he made. That being said, I thought that he was right to bench Julius Randle basically in games 2 and 4 down the stretch when he was really, really struggling. I think that Daigneault did outcoach him, but also like I didn't think that Daigneault necessarily had a masterpiece of a series. I thought he got better as it went along, though. Like he never went away from the double big starting lineup as I hoped that he would, but he started playing Hartenstein less. He started playing Caruso and Kaysen more. So I was happy to see that from him. I do think that Finch got out coached, but I would say it's not the biggest advantage. Like best player being better than best player, second offensive option being way better than second offensive option, team defense just being that much better. I think that those are really significant, but I did think that Daigneault also coached a really good series. I mean, I liked how much pressure they put on Ant, how much they forced the ball out of his hands, even though in game 4, the Timberwolves were able to have a really good offensive performance because the shooting around him was that great. Like, trust your system. It delivered in a big way in game 5. And OKC also just gets up game after game in a way that like nobody else does. They bring a different level of intensity. We have another Chris Finch related question. Hoyt's 22. Does Chris Finch have to go after the way this series went?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Chris Finch is like the biggest problem. I think the biggest thing is just what they do with the personnel this offseason. So, I mean, you can be disappointed with him, but I think Finch is a good coach for the most part.
Yeah. I think a lot of this probably comes down to what does Anthony Edwards want, if I'm being honest. Like, does Ant believe in Chris Finch? And I'm not saying that you should give a player full autonomy with these decisions, but it's close enough for me to be like, maybe you defer to him because I didn't think that he was good. I didn't think that he was good in this series, but I don't necessarily look at Chris Finch overall and think like he's a coach who's holding them back. Maybe motivation is a bigger issue though. I mean, maybe that's
the one area that we did kind of
see throughout this series. Yeah. It's tough to meet OKC on their level and meet their motor, but
this was not a
have spots where
this was not a composed basketball team.
Not a composed basketball team, and there are spots where their stars aren't as fully engaged as OKC's stars are, and OKC flattens a lot of teams. Like, that's just the reality of it, but they definitely flattened them in this one. So I thought he got out coached. I don't know if I would go as far as to fire him, though. Eli Switzer. Remember, guys, Lakers in 5, though. What a time that was, Logan.
Burgers and fries, cream cheese and chives, Adidas slides, Lakers in 5, bro.
OKC in 5, brother. That was insane. I mean, truly, like, the discourse this year has been insane. The discourse around Tyrese Halliburton in the Oklahoma City Thunder has been insane, Logan. And look where they are. Look where they both are. One more super chat. Cheeseheads in the Bear podcast says 10 out of 10 podcast. Thank you very much, my man. And thank you for your generous donation to the Nerd Sesh Foundation. The Thunder are on. Looks certainly like it's going to be the Indiana Pacers. I mean, I'll just say it. It's going to be the Indiana Pacers, who they're playing in the NBA Finals. We won't talk about that matchup yet. We got to save our preview content. But if I'm being honest, as much as I love Indiana, I don't think that they have much of a chance.
I think it's going to be a fun series, though.
I think it's going to be a fun series.
You know what? The one thing, I don't think, you're talking about flattening teams out. I don't think Oklahoma City is going to be able to break Indiana's spirit, and that's why I think it's going to be a good series.
I think it's going to be a good series. It's very difficult for me to see Indiana winning 4 out of 7. Very difficult.
It's difficult for me to see them winning 3 out of 7. I think it's probably going to be 6 or 5, but I don't think it's going to be a stinker. I think it's going to be a really good watch.
I do think it's really interesting. I do think that Indiana is the second best team in the league. So I think that they are more than a deserved finalist. And I think that in some ways they can provide some interesting counters to OKC that nobody else can. I also think OKC can provide some really interesting counters and problems for Indiana's offense that nobody else can. And that's where I just lean on the side of trusting one of the best defenses we've ever seen. And just the level that the Thunder's best guys are playing at right now, the level of their shooting, everything is just humming in a really special way. I do think they're the best team since the KD Steph Warriors, Logan. I said it. Is there any pushback from you? Would you take last year's Boston team? Would you take Denver of 2 years ago? Maybe we save this conversation for another time since we're an hour deep.
Honestly, the only other team I was thinking about was the 2019 Raptors. That was the one that I would have pointed to that I think that's the best team. Since.
Whoa. Better than last year's Celtics.
Yeah. That's close, but I would go with the Raptors. I just trust Kawhi in a different level. I think the veteran guys that you had on Toronto, and I feel like they were, even though the Warriors weren't healthy in the finals, I think they were a little more tested than that Boston. That Boston team last year was great. Don't get me wrong. I think I would go with that Raptors squad, though.
The offensive ceiling that the Celtics last year had is just on a different level, in my opinion, and just the overall shooting volume. I mean, the way that they could just kill you with those barrages while being an elite defense, maybe the best defensive team in basketball last year. What they did to Dallas was just outstanding. That regular season being as dominant as it was, that postseason being as dominant as it was, even considering competition not being strong, they just blew out everybody. That's the only team that really makes a compelling case against OKC, but you can't overstate how big the gap defensively is, even between this OKC team and that Boston defense, which was so great. Like, we're still talking about multiple tiers of difference and impacting the game in so many phases, and the Thunder dominating the turnover and the transition margin as consistently as they do while having this offensive god in Shai. Like, I'm not taking anybody over that team. I'm ready to say it. We'll see if they can back it up in the finals. That's what's next. Congratulations to the Thunder. I'm wearing a Sonic sweatshirt today. It's kind of appropriate, I guess. Not really, but close as I can get. I don't have any Thunder stuff. We will be back here tomorrow, Logan. We'll see if the Pacers can take care of business. We'll see if they can finish off those boys in New York, and we'll see if the Halle Band can strike again. And we will be here to talk about that game with all you guys. We hope you are here with us live on our YouTube channel or watching back after the fact, or of course, listening to the podcast across all audio platforms. Also, I did make a video about OKC's Big Three and the masterclass that they played in Game 4. That is on our YouTube channel today. I thought that was the best collective game that we've gotten from those guys in the biggest spot of their careers. And that was a really fun rewatch, man. Shai was just something else in that game, but everybody's coming to their own in a really special way for OKC as of late. If you want, of course, you can follow us on social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can see us play our grids. You can see us do our trivia. You can see us banter. We have so much fun, Logan, don't we? Mm-hmm. Don't we just have a great time? Mm-hmm. We have a hell of a time.
We're going to have a great time tomorrow night. Y'all pop back out. Pacers, Knicks.
We're going to have a good time tomorrow night, and by that, he's not insinuating anything romantic or homoerotic. He's saying we're going to talk about basketball. Well, you say we're going to have a good time tomorrow night. Oh.
I don't even want to show up anymore.
Well, Logan, we'll just talk about basketball, and we'll see where things go from there. How about that?
All right.
Don't throw a pit.
I can do that.
Don't throw a pity party. Don't throw a pity party, Logan. It's not a good color on you. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. And with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.